So I'm Jeff, you figured that out. And I'm really thrilled that you're all here. We're gonna make books. And I'm really excited about that. I put the print shop in at the beginning of the pandemic. And the plan was that I would be running printing programs and we'd roll into Bookarts eventually, a year, whatever. And when it became clear that I'd be teaching on Zoom, it made sense to flip it around. So we're gonna be doing the Bookarts because you can do that at home. It's really hard to send these printing presses to your house. It was hard enough to get them in here. So I hope that all of you will have an opportunity to come visit the studio and print. It's amazing to do. But in the meantime, we're gonna make some books. So look at my notes. A couple of things that need to know, or you need to know. And I put, this was in that letter or the email, but that was long and long and long. These classes may not be 2 hours. I've allocated 2 hours. And if we fill up 2 hours, actually we can go up to, I think, to 2:15, 2.5. That's fine. But the plan is to get through the material and then call it a night. So if it's an hour, we've gotten through the material, it's an hour. If it's 2, that's great too. The kits, I think you've probably figured out tonight, you need kit 1A and 1B. We're gonna do 2 structures tonight and they're relatively simple. That's why we're doing 2. And if you need anything between lessons, feel free to contact me and reach out to me, particularly materials and things like that. It was not rocket science figuring these kits out, but it was a bit of a headache. And I'm certainly not complaining, I'm learning. So if you need materials, I would be happy to get those to you, whatever it takes to do it. Also, you have one more kit coming because I didn't have the supplies for your Japanese stab binding. They literally came the day I was packing kits and I wasn't gonna do both in one day. So those are gonna come out in the next few days. I also am gonna correct a kit. I tried to build one of the kits I sent you and I don't like it. It can be done, but you don't wanna work that hard. So I'm gonna resend some paper for that kit. That's the Starbook kit. That's the lesson after the next one. All right, so let me flip to the other camera. So this is my work surface. I'll throw something out there so you can see. And this is a, I'm sorry, something just jumped up on my screen. I don't know what it's for. It looks like everybody's in. That's what's important. Okay, so this is my down-facing camera. A couple things you need to know is that it doesn't autofocus. So if it's ever out of focus, speak up and I will fix it. If you need me to zoom in, we can do that. And we can zoom out. It's a Mac. Or no Mac, it's a Canon Rebel that's just hooked up to do this for me, and it does a really nice job. So let's talk about, just review what structures are you're going to build in this class. So tonight, you're going to make a pamphlet, and that really sounds like kind of a cop-out, but a pamphlet is a really important early book to work on. And pamphlets were used, I mean, we know what a pamphlet is, but these were used as small books. They're the same as chapbooks. You've probably heard that term. Poets publish chapbooks, and they're put together this way. They're a sewn binding, so you're going to be sewing tonight. It's very, very simple sewing. These will go together very, very quickly. It's a great way to bind together things that you might have around the house. And I don't know, it's very useful, and it's a great place to start. And this is a, looks horrible in the brown on brown. But this is a pamphlet. It's exactly the same stitch you're going to be doing today. And this was published by the Roycrofters, I think in 1908. And the Roycrofters were considered, 1907. The Roycrofters are considered some of the best printers there were. Dart Hunter was the printer and paper maker there. And these are just absolutely beautiful and very, very, very traditional. So that's a pamphlet, and that was one of their published books. So we're going to be doing those tonight. And then we're going to move to a Japanese stab binding, a floppy stab binding. So Japanese stab bindings come in a lot of variations, 2 basic variations. One is our first class, and one is our last class. So this is the one we're going to be making today. And it's just pages sewn together between two floppy covers. There are no boards in here. We're not going to talk about covering boards until next week. So I guess that brings up some of the things on your material list. This yes paste, if you don't have it tonight, you're in good shape. You don't need it till next week.
What?
Yes. No, okay. I feel like I'm talking to no one. Are you out there?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sure.
We're here.
Okay.
Yes.
That's fine. You're listening politely. I understand.
Where's the best place to get the Yes paste?
That's a pretty bird. I got mine. I think I just ordered on Amazon, just the first place that came up.
Okay.
If you want to support local companies, I've given you links to Hollanders in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and to Dolphin Paper in Franklin, Indiana, and they will both stock it too.
Great.
All right. So these are traditionally used in Japanese to bind woodcut. They used to have a wonderful woodcut book that was bound in this manner, and they're absolutely beautiful. So we're going to do that simple thing. I put that one together today as a practice. And then next week, we're going to be doing accordion books. Yours is going to look like this one. And you got scraps. So you can look at the stuff you have at home, I'm sure, to put things on your covers. But the accordion book, you can turn like pages, but it also pulls out. They can also be hung up. And I made some of these in my nature journal class and as demonstrations. In fact, there's already a video on my YouTube about how to embellish an accordion book. So you can look at that if you want to. We can stick envelopes in them and bind. Well, you can bind a pamphlet into another book. That's a pamphlet bound to an accordion book.
Wow.
That's cool.
And then this is the one I'm sending you new papers for. These these accordion books too are hardbound. So next week you'll be covering hard boards. So you do need your paste for that. And then the following week, these are also accordion books, but they're folded differently. And these are often called star books or flutter books. You'll find the names of book structures are really ambiguous. But this one can open in a circle. People use them for Christmas ornaments or Christmas cards. So this one opens as a circle, but if you take exactly the same pages, the same folds, and you assemble them in a different manner, you get a book that pulls straight out. And I did a Bookarts class at IUPUI years ago, and we did one of these. I bet it had 50 pages in it. And it went out for feet and feet and feet. And it was just magnificent. It's like a slinky. You could put it on a table and spill the cover off, and the whole thing would fall to the floor. It was really, really pretty. And then the last binding we're going to work on is, and this has almost all the whistles and bells of a hardback book. I say almost because it doesn't have a hinge back cover. But I'm gonna offer classes for things like that in the future. So this has a hinge. It does have a hinge in it. So it's got a hard cover that opens on a hinge, just like you're used to books doing. And then it's got a text block and hardback front and back. So that's the last project we're gonna do. Sound like fun?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
So pamphlets. So you need to get out your pamphlet kit. Mine looks just like yours. So I wrote this, and I probably said it a few times, but just to be clear, you get 2 sets of materials in this class because you may make mistakes, and I don't want you to freak out and not have materials. You will make mistakes. People make mistakes, right? I don't want you to be worried about materials. And also, I want you the opportunity during the week to explore these structures on your own without me or without other people around. So you can really think about it and let it sink in and make it your own. Then we have a Facebook page. It's Letterpress and Bookarts at GB Davis Studios or something like that. I gave you the link to that in the email. And I'd like you to share the work that you're doing with that. So you can, as you make structures or you explore structures, you go to Pinterest and find new things. I want you to share those on those Facebook pages. And Margie and Miles, I'm sorry, I don't have any other way to do that.
Oh, Grandma has an account. We'll go on her account.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I knew there'd be a workaround. All right. And I really should have the camera on the face when I'm talking, but I'm not a producer, am I? So I guess the first thing I want to do is show you how to fold paper. So you've got a bone folder. It doesn't look exact like that, but I think you know which one that is. Actually, you have two bone folders, and you want the one that looks like this. If you don't have a bone folder, a steel ruler will work. A spoon, I've seen people use spoons. And you've probably all folded paper your whole life without one and done just fine. But it's a nifty, nifty tool. So I guess first we're going to do the text blocks. I'm going to make a wonderful tangerine one. And you've got a pile of these papers that should be 6 3/4 by 6 3/4. I also, this is kind of a half apology. When you make kits for all these books, not all the cutting is as precise as it would be if I made, 1 or 2 books in the shop. So please give me a little bit of forgiveness if these aren't perfect. And you can always trim things up, razor blades and crafts knives. Oh, somebody coming in.
Yay.
Yes. So I want you to just, whatever the pile is I have there for your text block, take about half those pages. Since we're not really putting anything in our text blocks, it doesn't really matter how many pages we use. Give ourselves, well, that's all the room I get. I'm going to take this moment to remind people who are coming in late, this is going to be recorded, and I will post it tomorrow, and I will send you the links. So if you've missed anything, you haven't. All right, so folding paper. When you make books, you want to fold paper really precisely. And I think if you've made books in the past, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think we've all put something book-like together. And the instinct is to take all those papers and fold them together at once. But we don't do that. Why don't we do that? This is when you can talk.
They'll come out in different sizes.
Okay.
Fold.
Anybody else?
And the
Yeah,
folds
fold-
wouldn't be square.
Yeah, especially if you have more papers.
Okay. Okay, so the folds aren't going to be as sharp and as clean as you want, and sloppy folds take up more space than precise folds. And it will move the foredge of the book, but you're going to see that's going to happen anyway, because as you nest these papers, and we'll talk about it as we do it, as you nest the papers, they're all going to bump out the thickness of the paper. And I have tools here where I can chop things off and make them perfectly clean. But traditional books didn't do that. If we look at that pamphlet we just had here, this foredge, this is one of the best print shops in the country, and this foredge is a mess. Don't make excuses, make good. Should be hanging that the other way on the wall. All right, so to fold paper. We're not going to worry about grain in this lesson. Grain is important, but I don't want to throw too many things at you. And really the best way to determine grain is to tear your paper, and you don't have enough extra to do that. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it in half, and you want to line up. I'm going to stop, put my glasses on. And if I lean forward and put my hat in the view, which I've been known to do, shout out. So I want to make sure that those edges are absolutely perfectly aligned, corner to corner, edge to edge. And then I'm going to stretch out my hand and anchor those. If those don't move, the fold's going to be perfect. And then with a bone folder, I'm going to hold it at about a 45-degree angle, and I can put it down anywhere I want to on this paper. And I'm going to sweep this direction, and I'm going to come back and sweep that direction. And then you have a super, super precise tight fold. Now, when I was first doing this, I would go over it really, really hard. You don't need to do that. That's going to emboss it. You're going to get a shiny stripe down the side. You don't need to do that. Just make sure you get a nice sweep either way. And I hear people working, and that's fantastic.
It's like peacock. Oh, that's my cat. I'm sorry.
I was thinking that might be your cat. I see pictures of your cat on your desk a lot. Are you working?
Yes, she's come in because she hears the zooming.
I thought it was somebody who made a bad fold.
Excuse me?
I thought it was somebody who made a bad fold.
Oh,
That's fine.
that would be terrible. We've got lots of paper. Paper's cheap, folks. I'll send you more. So I do want to, if you want to go ahead and fold all your, 5 or 6, 7 of these pages, go ahead and do that. While you're doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about your work method because I've given a lot of thought to what I expect you to do. And I'm the kind of the teacher that doesn't know what to tell you to do, or it's up to you. You're the learner. I have a feeling there's some people that are perfectly happy watching and going back and doing this on their own time. I think there are people that are going to want to keep up and do this with us, and that all of that is okay. So throw up your hands and give up, that's fine. So I'm stacking these with all the folded edges facing the same way. That's just organizational. This is where being a teacher is really odd because I should be walking up and down the rows and looking over your shoulders and offering you help.
So far, so good.
Awesome. This is not, rocket science. And no matter how difficult a task is, even building ukuleles, it's not hard. You break it down into really, really simple steps. Sometimes many, many, many simple steps. I see Miles nodding. He's been there.
Yes.
Miles was my apprentice before he absconded to Colorado with his mom and his family. It's nice to see both of them there. We have people in Washington, people in Illinois, people in Colorado, Indiana. Am I missing any others?
Where in Colorado do you live?
Colorado Springs.
My sister lives in Parker. I spend a lot of time out there.
Oh.
The weather's beautiful.
How many pieces do we need to fold, Jeff?
Just enough that you feel like you have a pamphlet, 5, 6, 7, something like that.
I did it.
Hooray. You can really get a rhythm going and fold a lot of paper fast with a bone folder. I have this cute, teeny tiny one too.
Ooh.
And then, can we move on?
Yes.
Okay, I won't rush you. But. So now you pick a piece of cover paper. I've picked this tangerine. If you have this plain paper, it's called Lakta. It's made in the Himalayas. Usually it comes from Nepal. And I'm not sure what the fibers are, but it's really a pretty paper. It's nice to work with. It's horrible to paste. We're going to have headaches when we have to paste it. Sometimes paste goes right through it. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. This has a polished side and a rough side. It's actually dried on a board, so it's smooth on one side and rough on the other. I'm going to put rough side out. Doesn't matter. Need glasses again. And you can do exactly the same fold.
This was fibrous. It was a little harder to get to lay nice before I,
Was it a piece of that Lacta?
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it has some really stiff fibers in it. Did you get it? Did you will it flat?
Got it.
Okay.
Jeff, spell that word for the name of that paper.
L-O-K-T-A.
Thank you.
And if you, once you start seeing what we're going to use papers for, I think you'd find it very fascinating to go to Hollander Papers website or to Dolphin Papers website and see the papers that are available. They're just amazing. Driving down to Dolphin Papers, pretty fun adventure. When I did this in the classroom, we took a field trip to Dolphin, but that's going to be hard for some folks. All right, so I sent you these. This is your book cradle. And I made several mock-ups before I decided I found one I liked. We actually don't need this quite yet, but as long as I've started, we'll talk about it. And I like this because you can use your book boards, and these book boards are masonite. Unfortunately, I couldn't find masonite tempered on both sides. These are smooth on one and rough on the other. Don't put the rough side against your book unless you want it to pick up that texture. I doubled up on boards. I think most of you got 4 boards. That was, I think Lisa Halcom's the only one I shorted, and I'll catch up with you, Lisa. Because I thought there might be times when you're pressing, and we're not doing it yet, but we want to put them back to back. But anyway, for this, you're going to drop them in here, smooth side up. And the pins at the bottom are going to give you enough room to work with a needle inside. Now, if you have boards at home or you want to sacrifice some boards for it, I have another one here that I nailed together. It's exactly the same plan. Well, instead of putting pins in here, I nailed this together. But it doesn't go in envelopes so well. I'm going to just put that aside for a minute because we need to assemble this book and talk about sewing before we ever get to that. So you're going to need these, and you're going to need these 2 paper clips.
These ones?
I can't see you.
Oh. They're the black clippy kind?
No. Oh, did you not get the silver ones?
No.
Oh, they're stuck on something. I put them on something, Lisa. There's a piece of paper in there, and they're clipped to it.
Oh, look.
Lisa's been cleaning type for the print shop, so I hand-delivered her stuff yesterday.
I have them. Sorry. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I want people to ask. Take me 40 minutes to drive them over, but people would wait.
No.
All right, so you're going to do with this exactly what you think you are. You're going to open the one up, and you're going to nest the next one in it, and hold that open. Nest the next one in it. I think you know where to go from there. I hear people still folding, don't I? That's all right.
Is this the point, Jeff, if you're a little OCD, you could trim the edges?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's completely up to you. And when my shop is open, I have a paper cutter that'll go through 3 inches of paper, and you can take a book block and make it really, really clean.
Wow.
All right, I know. It's fun toys, Miles.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're going to do the same thing. You're going to drop it into your cover. And actually, let me back up a little bit. So this, just this vocabulary thing. But when you tap paper on the end like that, it's called jogging. So if I ask you to jog something, that means tap it so you even up the edges. So I just evened up the bottom. If you got ones I cut well, the top will line up too. We assume nothing. And I'm going to just drop that in there. And now I'm looking to see that this is in focus, that this and this are equal. And when they are, you want to clip it together.
Was that the top and bottom margins?
Yes.
This and this? Okay.
And you want to make sure it's all the way down in the valley too. Mine isn't. So you have to kind of semi-close your book before you put the clips on it, or the text block won't sink down into the valley. And it should be tight in there like that. Stephen, how have you been?
All right, had to unmute. Doing well.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. You doing okay?
Yeah. How have you been?
Okay.
Just been milling a lot of lumber.
Have you?
Yeah.
I have a project coming up where I need a lot of lumber, but I doubt you've got 1,000,000 feet of white pine.
No. That's a lot of white pine.
Well, I don't really need 1,000,000. I got a commission for almost 60 identical dogs, big dogs.
I was at the hotel.
Yeah, for the hotel in Oregon. They accepted it today.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you gonna drive them out?
I said that. I said, I'd like to drive them out and see my sister. And she thought I was crazy. But I might.
The Northwest still got the nice white pine and stuff.
Yeah. Actually, it's better than it used to be because it's over 2 inches. It's like 2 1/4 thick now.
Oh, yeah, because it was about what, 1 7/8 or so.
Yeah, it was a little under 2, and it's over 2 now. So I don't know what the source is, but I'm happy. All right. So now you want to just drop this in the cradle. And now we're going to do some math without numbers. My favorite kind. Coming back. I had no scrap paper next to me. So you're going to need a strip of paper. It doesn't have to be anything special. It just has to be as long as the book. It doesn't even have to be exactly as long as the book. It just needs to be enough that you can go from one end to the other. And we're going to determine the positions for the sewing holes. I don't know if the mics pick it up, but I'm in a basement of an apartment building and a toilet just flushed and went right over my head. You can't buy sound effects like that. Okay, so I'm going to drop this in the book. And I'm looking at the text block. It wouldn't matter whether you look at the cover or the block. And I've got a pencil. I'm just going to put a tick mark. So I'm marking the length of the text block from the top to the bottom. And I've made just a little tick mark here on the end.
Jeff, do we mark the paper or the actual book?
I'm marking the paper, the scrap paper. Good question. So what we're going to do here is determine where the center is, and then we're going to determine 2 evenly spaced holes on either side of that center hole. So if we look at, pull one out.
Would you do that one more time, Jeff?
I sure will. No, it's fine.
I was cutting.
I taught school. I'm used to this, Lisa. You did too. All right. So this gets dropped in here. I'm going to line the top up with the top of the text block. And then I'm going to take a pencil and make a mark right at the bottom of the text block.
Thank you.
Yep. So there I've measured the length of the book. And then to find the center, we could get out a ruler, but are we going to do that?
No, fold it.
Yeah, we're just going to fold it in half. So I folded it, and now we have the center point, and I'm going to mark that. Now we need another hole somewhere in here and in here. And it doesn't matter. It's arbitrary. It's aesthetics more than anything. So I'm just going to fold the paper in half and pick a spot. I think that looks good right there. And I'm going to mark both papers. So I have a mark on either side. Now you've got to do a little looking through your paper because you'll have a mark on one side and not the other. But here I've got, let's get this under the camera, Jeff. I've got the center here. Well, here's from one end to the other. That's the end. I can put X down here. That doesn't matter. So from one end to, from the head to the tail, to the center, and then 2 holes on either on the outside. So we're going to punch 3 holes. 1, 2, 3. And if you look at these, see there are 3 holes there. And this one is tied on the inside. So I've been told that I offer way too many options to people during art classes. And so I tried to cut that down, but you do have an option here. Do you want to tie it on the outside or on the inside? And both are correct. Do you want to tie it in a bow or a little overhand knot? These are both overhand knots. But we're not there yet, are we? Everybody have their strip?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I should ask, does anybody need me to wait? Because I can. We have plenty of time. All right, so you're going to need your awl. Here's the awl. Awl is my very favorite tool because every discipline that I have, from sign making to leather making to letterpress to bookbinding and woodworking, awl is a tool that's centric to all of those different disciplines. And I have a stump in my shop with about 20 of them in it. Okay, so you're going to drop this. So you've got the book opened up in your cradle. You're going to drop this in, line up the top and bottom just like you did when you drew it. You're going to put a little bit of pressure on the cradle so it doesn't fall apart on you because it's not attached together, but you'll be okay. And then you're going to punch straight down. 1, 2, 3. And because you use the cradle, it's going to put those holes are going to be in the very, very bottom of the valley. I'm going to clip this in here so you can see where I did that.
So we're piercing the whole book, not just marking or anything.
Right, you're going to pierce all the way through with the awl. You're going for it.
Do we do the center and then the 2 on either side of it as well?
Right, right. 1 towards the top,
3
1
of them.
towards the bottom. Yeah,
Okay.
there's 3 holes total. Or 5 or 9. It's got to be an odd number. We're doing 3.
Okay.
Got where I can see your pictures again. I see you working. I like that. Okay, we ready to sew?
Yeah.
So you're gonna need your needle and your thread.
Matter which size needle.
I haven't even looked at what needles they have. Let me look. I just pulled one out of my kit. Switch this over. I assume they were all the same. Silly me. It's not going to be a really big deal on this book. But the second one you do today will be. So I would pick one where the one with the smallest eye. So I don't know how to describe that, except there are two that have significantly smaller eyes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Then I'm going to pull out, not much, 18 inches of thread or so. Switch back the other camera. So if you're interested in colored thread, this is called Main Thread, and you don't get it bookbinding places, but you can find it online. Amazon has it, and it's like the state of Maine, Main Thread, and it comes in really wonderful colors. I use it for leather work and for this. So I want to show you how to thread the needle for book art. It's the same as for leather. So Miles, you have this down.
Yeah.
You want to pull through, what's that, 4 or 5 inches? This is going to take really tight focus. 3 or 4 inches. And then I'm going to double the needle back on that tail, and I'm going to split the thread. So I'm coming up right through. Is there any way we can see that? Yeah. I'm coming up right through the middle of that thread. And then we're going to pull that back over the eye and over the thread beneath it. And then you pull it up, back up close to the head. It doesn't have to be tight against, but close. And that gives you very little bulk behind the needle.
Can you do another one?
Absolutely.
I didn't get it.
No, that's fine. One moment. I'll do anything as often as you need, guys. And this is a really odd platform for teaching threading needles. Okay, so I take this is all waxed, your thread's waxed too. And I like to take my thumb and just give it a really tight scrape at the end to flatten it out. Then it goes through the eye much quicker. And then I'm going to pull out 3 or 4 inches. And then I'm going to, this is the end. In sailing, we call that the bitter end, the end that's not tied to anything. And we're going to come back around, and I'm going to put the needle right up through the thread, which is easier said than done sometimes. There we go. So I actually am splitting that thread with the needle coming right up through the middle of it. Then holding the tail, I'm going to hold the needle, and I'm going to pull that tail back down over the eye and onto the thread below. And then I like to pull it up just a little bit closer. And it's wax, so you can give it a little bit of rubbing with your thumb and finger. It'll stick together a little bit. And if you want more wax, you can always do that. It's beeswax. And that gives you very little bulk behind the needle. And I think some of us are going to struggle with our Japanese stab bindings later tonight with that bulk. So if you can get that down as much as possible, it will help with a lot of books. The pamphlet's a no-brainer. You could poke the thread through the holes. All right, so I'm going to take.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
still didn't get it. Sorry.
Did you tie something?
No, I'll do it again. That's no problem. I guess technically it's a knot, but not in the sense you're thinking.
So you're actually poking the eye of the needle back through the thread, right?
With the point of the needle.
Oh, the point of the
Yeah.
needle.
So here I go. I'm going to thread just like you would, pulling out 3 inches or
Okay.
so. Now this point, the pointy part, and I know it's hard to see, is going to go through that thread towards the short end. So I'm going to, and I have to put it against my thumb to get it, and it's hard to see, I know. I only got 1 hair. I want more than that. There we go. So now, can I get, yeah, actually this isn't too bad.
That's where I made my mistake. I was using the wrong end. I was doing, okay, I got
So
it.
now we just pull that down over the needle, over the eye, and then onto the thread below it. And then cinch that up. And focus. There we go.
Yay. Now I
And
got
then
it.
I twist and pull a little bit just to flatten it out.
How far are you cinching it up?
How far am I what?
How far are you cinching it up? Like, what's the distance between the eye of the needle and that knot that you made?
Oh, let me pull it out. There you can see it's about 1/2 inch.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yep. And you pull it right up against it. But the problem with that is when you go to take the thread off at the end, it's hard to cut it off. It's nice to have a little room to get a razor blade or a scissors in there and cut that off. All right. So I'm going to take this out of here. We don't, oh, let me move this. So I'm taking the pattern out, laying it aside. Since both your books are the same size, you may use it again, but you may choose to cut the paper I gave you and make a different size. What's nice is that you can make that for any book at any time really fast. So that's going in my paper bucket, my recycling bucket. Now I'm going to decide whether I want this needle or this knot to be on the inside or the outside. I really don't like that yellow with that orange, so I'm going to put it on the inside. So I start on the inside. You start with a center hole. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to pull it and leave about 2 inches. In fact, if you want some insurance, it's not a bad idea to stick it up in the paper clip. And we're done with the cradle. I'm moving that out of the way. I'm not going to be able to leave it there because I don't have enough thread, but if you have enough. I kept having to cut it off for some reason. Okay, so now I'm going to go towards the head. You can go towards the tail. It doesn't matter. I'm just giving you direction. And I'm going to come up. Now, when you pull on thread in a book, don't pull straight up because it'll pull right through the paper. So if you want to add tension, you pull parallel to the paper. And you will learn that the hard way sometime. At least I did. Now we're going to skip the center hole and go all the way to the other end. And I'm going to put that through, and I'm going to pull that tight. And I'd be happy to sew this together 10 times if we need to, so don't sweat it. Then I'm going to go to the center hole, and I'm going to come up on the other side of the thread. So this thread is on this side right now, so I want the needle to come out going that way. So I'm going to pull that over just a little bit and come up on the other side. So this thread, I'm going to get down here where I can focus it and leave it, because you got to be sick of that bouncing around. So the thread is on this side, and then the other thread is on this side. And then you're going to pull it tight, add a little tension. Again, pulling the long way, just snug it up. And then this is where you get to decide the knot. I'm going to put an overhand knot. It's wax, so one overhand knot, like you're tying your shoes, but you're only doing the first step, will lock up pretty well. It's not permanent, but it's not bad. You could do a square knot. You could do a bow. I'm just going to pull tight with one overhand knot. Then I'm going to trim both ends to, I don't know, 1/2 inch. It's all what you want. They can be hanging out of the book if you want.
You could leave it hanging out of the book for a bookmark.
Yeah, you could. In fact, we can talk about on some of these. I do mini lessons during the week for all my classes. Well, not all of them every week, but there will be some mini lessons, and one will involve ways you can use ribbon for closures and bookmarks and things like that,
Nice.
which I have not done in a long time. I'm looking forward to doing it. So, does anybody need me to do that again? I'm happy to do it. Okay, that's a finished book, almost. So you take the clips off, and you've got a pamphlet. Now, it's not very tight. In fact, it doesn't even want to close. So this is where weights come in. And what I suggest you do with a book like this, in an ideal world, I'm going to move the whole computer. This is going to be very awkward, but I'm going to do it. In my shop, I have this nice book press right there.
Oh, wow.
And I can put things in there and smash the heck out of them. And actually, I can do everything I need to do to this book in one motion. And I will do it in a minute and show you. It takes a few seconds. But at home, and this is how I did it first for many, many years. It was a long time before I had a book press. I improvised with clamps and boards. But this was my first book press. Just a flat iron. And it works really well because you have a handle and you can manipulate it. It stores pretty well, holds your doors open. So I suggest tonight that you put up one of those boards on it that I got, or a pile of books works really well too. And this is dry. You don't need, we're not worried about glue. So I would just do that and put that weight on it and let it sit. And it will be better in the morning. It won't be as tight as it would be in mine, but it's going to be tighter. And plenty of people make nice books without book presses. If you're in town, though, and you need to use one when we're open again, that's what it's here for. It's for students, not just mine. So I'm going to take that over now and do that, and you can kind of get an idea.
Jeff, I use cases of vegetables, canned goods.
I like that.
I have a brick wrapped in saran wrap.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
I had bricks wrapped in paper. I have some woodworking things that need weights, and I have sash weights from our house. None of our upper sashes are operational anymore, so I took out all the weight. So there, now it'll sit flat.
Wow.
And I think, though who knows, it looks like we might be a little ahead of time. So I want to show you how to apply something to this. Because I can teach you a little bit of pasting, and we're just going to use a glue stick tonight. And you don't even need to do this with me. I just want to show you how to do it. So I'm digging through my scraps. Your scraps came out of this bag. And this is a fun bag. It's got great stuff in it. And I'm just going to find something that complements. So this is a Locta that's been silk screened with gold ink. Some of you are going to get these for your Japanese hardbacks. Isn't that pretty?
Beautiful.
So I'm walking over to a paper cutter. I'm just going to cut out a square really fast.
Does it matter what kind of paper? I have a bunch of scrapbooking paper.
Scrapbooking paper works. It's not the incredible, it's not book art quality, but it's fine. I've certainly played with a lot of it. Okay, so all I'm going to do here is just show you how to do a quick paste up. And I'm going to apply this. And I got this old cut of a guy using a table saw, which is probably the most inappropriate thing in the world for that color, but that's what I have. So here's how you do paste up. And it's the same way with paste, but we're going to do it with a glue stick. This is a piece of scrap paper I suggest you get a magazine, and I'll show you more about that next week. And you put a finger in the middle of the paper, and whether you're using a glue stick or a paste brush, you start from the middle and go to the outside, and you run off the paper. And you want to do that because you want it to be pasted all the way to the edge. And yes, you do get glue on your fingers. But now I've got glue all the way to the edge. Now I'm notorious for putting things on crooked so I don't have to worry about whether they're straight or not. And if you were doing this at home, I'd ask you to get a piece of wax paper, put your board over it, put that on it, wait a couple of minutes, and then we're going to do the same thing with this one. Now this paper can't be used now because it's going to get pasted all over the wrong places if I put that face down. So when you use a magazine, you'll use one and then you tear it off, and you've got another piece ready and waiting. This goes into my recycling. And these are cutoffs from your books. I'm going to do the same thing. Paste out from the middle. And then stick that on there. And then I'm going to put it in my press for a minute. Not even a minute. We call it kissing or nipping when you just come down on the press hard and get it right back out. And there it is.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Aw, you should be clapping for yourselves. You all have finished books in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Hold them up in the camera. We want to see. Here we go.
Beautiful. They're beautiful.
So anybody have any ideas for what they'd want to do with a book like this?
I do.
Let's hear some.
I want to tell anecdotes about musical compositions that I love, and a story about that's connected to the composition.
Fantastic. I think these make really good invitations. In fact, my grandmother's dance cards from the 20s, and Sally will attest to this, were pamphlets, and they had one, there's one fold in here with the invitation to the dance, and then numbered 1 through 10 or whatever on there, and then all the committee people's names on the back. So these were used for programs and dance cards and small catalog. My first catalog was actually a pamphlet. Like we put out catalogs anymore. Does anybody have any questions about this before? I keep pointing the book and my face is in there. Anybody have any questions before we move on to the Japanese book?
Are there any tricks to make the bindings, or not the bindings, but when you stitch it up, the threads tighter?
Just making sure that you're keeping tension, pulling parallel to the book all the way through.
Okay.
And this is not a book that's ever going to be terribly tight. It's just the nature of a pamphlet. There are some book structures that we will study, not in this class, but if you continue to take classes with me, where you actually stack 3 or 4 of these up, and the stitches will come out of one of these holes and go into the next one and come back out. And that's one of the ways that you can attach multiple signatures together.
Oh.
And then there's some fancy stitches you can do with that too. Most I don't remember, but I'm going to. All right. So now the Japanese stab binding. That's the other kit. And this is just 2 pieces of paper for the covers and whatever you want the body to be. So about half the white paper I stuck in there. Japanese sandman. Kind of cleaning up my area. In other words, shoving things aside. So this is where the OCD of you might get a little upset with these papers because they're not as nice and trim as I'd like them to be. But you will build the structure and you will know and understand. And you can trim these up on your own. There are ways to do that. So are you using your marbled paper tonight?
I am. I have
So
a lot of.
my sister's a marbler. I don't know how you can show that though. I've got some of her stuff here. Here's some of her papers. These are hers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very pretty.
Beautiful.
Someday we're going to get her in a Zoom class to teach you how to do that on Zoom.
I don't think that's very zoomable.
Well, they can watch. We can do a
I
movie.
guess we could just do it to music or something.
It is absolutely wonderful to do. She's a good teacher. All right, this book is pretty straightforward. I've already assembled it without telling you. So I took this paper, and if you have this paper, it's French. I have 2 French marbles that are in the kits you have. This one and there's a red one. Oh, there's a dark blue one too. They're the real deal. So I've got this for the back cover, and then I'm going to put a text block in there. And I didn't count that. I took half of what I had in there, but I've got enough for a whole class, so I probably took more than you have. And I'm going to jog that. And now we're going to use the black clips. And I'm just going to clip it together so it doesn't move around on us. This is where you learn that binders clips really are used for binding. Okay, it got quiet. I think we're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at these books, they've got a row of holes here. They're stitched over the back. I wanted to also, I'm going to show you things in a book. Let me do that too. This is Cover to Cover by Shireen LaPlante. This book's been out forever, and it just came out again, but it's exactly the same book. But she goes through and tells you how to make pamphlets exactly like we did, and then lots of different stitches. But I really wanted to get into these Japanese stab bindings so you can see how beautiful they can become. But there's so much glare on that, I'm not sure you're going to see it. But these are all examples of stab bindings with appliques and additions. And we're just going to do the very most basic one. There's some really neat fancy stitches. So we're just going to line up some holes on the end and sew over the end. Hope we can measure better than I did on that one. So we're going to make a pattern again. So I have a scrap piece of paper. And this time, We're going to mark from the head to the tail just like we did before. And we're going to find the center point. Well, let's, before we do that, these holes are about a 1/2 inch from the edge. So if you have a ruler, I do have a ruler. I'm going to measure over a 1/2 inch. Actually, I think they'd look better a little deeper. I might go 5/8. If you don't have a ruler, you can eyeball this. You're going to be fine. I'm just going to put a line 5/8 in. That's the line that my that's the line my stitches will be on. They'll fit right on. Actually, we'll go that way. And then now we want to divide this up into more spaces than than just the 3. I think 5 would be great. So I'm going to fold it in half, and that'll give us our center point. And then these can't be, these aren't on the edge. They've got to be inset some. So I'm going to just arbitrarily pick that point to make that one. I'm going to fold it over and transfer it. So now we've got 3, and that's pretty much what we did on the other one, isn't it? Now we have to find halfway between these. So I'm just going to fold that over again. And there's that mark. You can fold it all the way over. Should just rub it and get that 3rd mark. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes. If you want to space those with a ruler, that's fine. I just like to eyeball and then fold. As long as it's symmetrical, you're okay. In woodworking, I usually reach for a compass before a ruler to lay something like this out.
Five, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And you know what? There are no rules. Try stuff, you'll find out. I found a button I could push and see different people.
Fancy.
That was exciting. Now these, since these are, I'm going to drill where these cross, I'm going to bring these up to where they cross that line, because that's where I'm going to put the holes. So there'll be a hole here, and here, and here, and here, and there. If I was being persnickety, I'd get out a square, but I'm not tonight. Of course, if I were doing a presentation book or a book for sale or something, I would do that. I'd measure everything. Okay, we ready to go on?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm gonna just cut, you don't have to cut this away, but I am just because I think it's more bulky than I want to mess with. So I just cut out the pattern part and throw this aside because I need to get it up here. Now I've got a block of wood. This morning when I was doing this for practice, I used one of the ends of my cradle, but I've since gone to my shop and gotten a block of wood. So either will work. And you're gonna put this pattern on here and center it and line it up. And then with an awl, you're going to just poke at each one of those intersections. You're not trying to go all the way through. In a traditional Japanese stab binding, you do go all the way through, but you don't use an awl like this. They have an awl that actually will drill a hole. We don't. We have a drill that'll drill a hole. So I'm just going to stab at each of those points to mark where those holes are going to be. Oh, are you awake? One part of this that's like classroom teaching is I see people's heads come up when they're done. All right, so the next part's what you have a drill for. I bet you saw that coming. So we're going to drill these holes out. I use a drill press because a drill press is absolutely vertical, but it's not practical in this setting, and I can't ask each of you to own a drill press. So I'm using just a cordless DeWalt drill with a 1/16 inch bit. The bit does not have to be exactly 1/16, but that's what I've been doing, and it's been working well. You want the hole to be tight, but you want to be able to get the needle through. And that's going to be the compromise. That's why I want you to get that smallest needle, because this is going to get pretty tight when we sew it up. So I want to make sure that everything's exactly vertical. I'm going to eyeball it. And one of the reasons we use an awl is because the drill will follow that hole. The drill bit will sit in that dimple, and you'll be able to drill exactly where it is. If we made a mark with a pencil, the drill bit doesn't necessarily want to sit in that little divot. So I can see my holes. I'm going to drop that in there and drill through. And it doesn't take much to drill through paper. You kind of want to hold it down and hold it tight. If you've got a helper that's, you might want to use 3 or 4 hands in there. I can't see one of those holes, so I'm going to have to come back with my template. Well, here drills. There we go. So I've got 5 holes in there. I taught a Japanese stamp binding class at scrapbook stores probably 15, 20 years ago. And I used a hand drill with a block. And there was a gentleman that made fun of me for using hand tools when power tools would be better. And he was helping his mansplaining his wife. And he managed to drill a hole right through the block beneath the book and into the table. I'm not sure I ever worked at that store again.
Ooh, nice.
Miles, are you using the Yankee drill? Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Perfect. I thought about it, but I didn't think people would have them, except you.
I have
They're
one.
the best tool.
What was that? Sally?
Yeah, I've got one
Yeah.
for the shack.
What size drill bit do we need?
I used a 1/16.
1/16?
Yeah. Something smallish, but not tiny. That doesn't tell you anything, does it?
1/16 is good. That's good.
That's what I have been using for the models. They have been working. I'm walking away for 30 seconds. I will be right back. Moxie, your turn. Up there. Just look at them. She's not very interested. Hearing very interesting noises in this segment. Everybody doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I don't seem to be getting all the way through this book.
What kind of drill are you using?
Walt, 12
Well,
volt.
that should do it.
Yeah.
The pages kind of lift up and want to follow the bit up, so I like to hold them down.
I had to run and ask Norm how to reverse the drill.
Ready to start sewing?
Yep.
Okay, so you can do thread and needle again.
18 inches again.
Maybe even a little more. It's a lot more stitches.
Which needle?
It's the littlest one. One with the littlest head. I'm glad you said that because I was doing the wrong needle. These holes get really tight.
Do you thread it the same way?
Remember how to do it?
Yep.
Okay.
So do the same thing with the thread that we did last time?
Yes. So these books have knots just like the pamphlet does. This knot I like, that's obviously where I like them. I'm always doing them in the same place. Where you want the knot is where you need to start. So that's probably the only thing you need to pre-think. But also, I guess I shouldn't talk to you about options. We'll just go straight through it and you can figure it out from there. Or we will figure it out together from there. So I'm going to start in the second hole from what would be the top if I'm holding it this way. So I'm in that second hole and I'm going to just pull through. Oh, I like that small needle. That's better than what I was using. I'm going to take that tail and put it through the clip so we don't lose that tail. And I have plenty to do that with this time. Miles and stitch is going to look very familiar to you. It's the same double stitching we use on leather. So you can go either way. Let's go towards the head. So we all go together. So I'm going to come up in the next hole. And remember to keep your tension. You pull. This one's got a little more body. You can pull up, but don't pull real hard. We're going to do this one fancier than the one I did. I want you to wrap around the head. So you can see we're going around the outside and come up through the hole. You just come up again through that same hole. And I like to use my fingernail, get that stitch right where I want it before I put tension on it. Because once you put tension on it, it's not going to move. So we went around the end, around the top, and came back up. And again, if somebody's not following, I'll do two of these. I don't mind. I'm going to go now around the bind of what would be the spine. There's no spine in this book, but what we think of as the spine. And I'm going to come up through that same hole. This is the third time in the same hole. This is why it gets tight. But this little needle's a joy. And what happens when you go through that hole is you're stitching through the thread. So you're really locking this up. Now we're going to go down through the hole where we started. I'm going to pull that snug. That didn't work. I'm trying to increase my depth of field. And I'm not sure what the computer's running and what I'm running on that camera. Okay, so now we're going to come around the end again and down through the same hole. I got it hooked around the whole book. You'll do that several times. And then right before you snug it up, get it parallel to the other one, because it will never move once you get it snug. And then we're going to repeat that. So now we're going to go to the middle hole. We're going to come up. Around what would be the spine in a conventional book. And back up through the same hole. Now it looks like we skipped a stitch, but we didn't. We're going to make that up when we come back. So that was hole number 3. I'm going to go down through hole number 4. around what would be the spine, and then down.
Jeff, do you come up or down through the fourth hole?
I went down through the fourth hole.
Okay.
I wouldn't sweat it because whatever way you end up going, when you go back, you're going to fill in all the gaps. But if you're following me, I went down through that hole. I guess I should presume you're following me, right? Okay, now I'm in the fifth hole. I'm going to come up. And you can go either way. You're going to do them both. I'm going to go up over what would be the spine first. And come up. I'm going to go around the tail and up. I will pause. Just let some people catch up. I've done this before where I've taken a piece of bone or wood and drilled holes through the book, so you're sewing over that. That looks really nice. You can wrap the text block with a different color paper, or you can fold paper around the whole text block. Take one that's the length of the block down across there and back, and then you end up with end sheets that are a different color.
Sure can tell if you got one hole a little bit off, can't you?
Yes. So now I'm going to, yeah, I'm sorry.
This is a mess. I'm ripping it out. I don't even know where it went wrong, but it went bad wrong.
Okay.
Sewing is probably the least ability of my many.
Well, I'm happy to walk through this a couple of times. Or more. So I'm coming down through, now we're hole 4 down, and now we're just filling in those gaps. It's just down, up, down, up. So I filled that gap. Now I got to fill this gap, so I'm going to come up. Well, I fill this gap. I'm going to come up. And so you end up with these 2 tails. And again, you're going to tie a knot, tie a bow. It can be in the middle. It can be at one end. I like them at the end. So I'm just doing I'm going to do a square knot, 2 overhand knots. I'm going to pull it up over that hole. And trim them off. So we can go through and do that again if anybody wants to. This book does not need to be pressed. It'll lay flat the way it is. So you just, at that point, take the clips off and it's done. You might want to do some trimming up. I kind of find that trimming up is, if you get it right, it looks great. But sometimes you end up chasing demons and get a very small book. You get one side right, and then the other side's wrong, and then you got to even it up. And then it's 4 inches shorter and ½ inch narrower. So Laura, was that you that was frustrated?
Yes, I'm going to step away from it so that I don't hurt myself.
Well, I'm just going to ask what I can do for you. Like, sounds like not much right now.
Nah, good.
I'm willing.
Jeff, when you were talking about stitching the binding
Yes.
and adding things under the stitches,
Yes.
you mentioned decorative paper and something else.
I used to buy, I don't know where I got them, but I'm going to start looking for, I haven't done books in a long time, so I will find these things again. But I used to at bead shops find bones that were long and narrow and then had 4 or 5 holes drilled in them. And I would design a book around that so the holes would be stitched down through that bone.
Oh.
You could do
Could
the
you
same
use-
thing with wood.
Could you use like a twig or a stick or something?
I've not done that, but I've seen people do that. And then I really like, and what I was talking about before, it's like take a piece of red paper that's long enough to come through here, wrap around the end, and then come out the other side. So then you've got a decorative end paper and you've got a nice red band across here.
Okay.
Wow.
And then I've seen people actually wrap, and I've done this too, wrap from about just a little bit outside the stitches, wrap that part like a gift in a different color paper, and then put the symbol this. So then you get a block of red or yellow at the end, and it's just like a regular gift wrap.
Okay.
You can also take these out really long and then fold them back under if you want the cover to have the pattern on both sides.
Oh,
So
nice.
So these are 7 inches and cut 14 inches and double them back. Actually, not quite 14 because you don't want them under here. Because if you have a fold on the outside edge and this is all pinned down, when you open it up, it's going to bow all over the place. It's going to put some tension in it. So you want to just fold it back and tuck it in there.
Okay.
There are a million variations. And if you start looking at Pinterest or looking at the books, and I'll start dumping a lot of stuff on the Facebook page too. And I hope you guys share your book pictures. And I hope you all make your second books.
Definitely.
Or start looking for paper for things that are completely outside of what I've taught you. So just kind of go back to these books. It's not the right one. But I just to remind you, so next week we're going to do accordion books, and they're hardbound books. You're going to cover boards. But this is exactly the pamphlet you guys just did, sewn into this book.
Oh.
And I did that as a demonstration. It'd be really great if it came all the way out to here.
Yeah.
So you can have books within a book. And this is for nature journaling, and people are looking for ways to tuck things in their books. So then you use glassine envelope. This is the same stitch. This is the pamphlet stitch. This is just glued in. That's just glued in. Oh, this is the other thing. You do overlays with tracing paper or vellum. This is glassine, which is that glassy paper that the envelopes are made from. And you can do overlays. But these really make really nice end papers too. So if you were to do a really nice Japanese stab binding and then have the first page be that glassine, that's really pretty. And Sally, you'll remember I did that on Grandma's book and I can't
Yeah,
find it. It's here somewhere, but I can't find it.
I just saw it the other day right here somewhere.
It was like really pretty vellum, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was vellum. And I printed it in inkjet. I'll find it to show people. We don't have to see everything tonight. It's in this shop somewhere.
You know that feeling.
So that's, unless you have questions, I'm not dismissing you, but that's what I have to share with you tonight, unless you have questions.
Thank you so much.
That was
Thank
great.
you. Yeah.
That's super. It's super cool.
So I guess my expectation, and I can't give you homework. I can give you homework, but I can't make you do it any more than I could make a 6th grader do it. Let's get back to let's face it, nobody can make anybody do that kind of work. But if you are so inclined, I would really like to see what you do with this project. So look for papers that you have around your house, ephemera or fabric. I'm going to do a mini lesson on how to use fabric to cover books. We won't do it in a lesson, but we'll talk about it. just look for the things around your house you can incorporate, especially when we start doing things with boards. I'm going to flip back down to the concertina book. I'm going to give away all my tricks in 1 week. No, there'll be more. But a book like this is hardbound. So it's got a piece of cardstock in it, and you've looked in your folders. You know what that looks like. That's book board. It's a really light book board. This is a map of the Adirondacks that I resurrected and had a plate made, and I print these now. But that's the end paper. That's glued in here to line this book, just like any hardback book you have. You can, before you put this in here, and let's go back. Before I put it on this edge, I can glue a piece of ribbon in here, or a piece of string or cord, or 4 of them. And you could make this book so you could tie it at this end, and it's no longer a concertina book. It opens like a regular book. But you could untie this side to reveal another side. And you'd have 2 complete books combined in one. In fact, you could even flip it over and have it go the other direction and have 4 ties on it. A lot of times I'd bring a ribbon around the back and I'd put a big button on here. I like Art Deco, big Art Deco buttons and things.
Yeah.
You wrap that ribbon around it and you can have a closure on it. They're just as many variations as you can think of. And when you start looking at what people are doing online, you'll see some amazing things. A lot of natural materials. I like vintage materials. I think you all know that. But really cool stuff. So your homework is to come up with something really neat and post it on that Facebook page. And if you don't, I won't chastise you. I don't want. So Laura is involved. Is everybody else? Yeah. Who else is? She's in the. Laura's in the nature journaling book. So is Deanna, her class. Am I missing anybody? But they'll tell you that group is incredibly kind and warm on Facebook. They post things every single day, and they're always received with all kinds of kudos and questions. And it's been a really positive thing to post your work. And at the beginning of the class, I'll be on there every day giving you feedback. It'll always be positive. Again, I should be showing my face. I can see it, so I think you can. It'll always be positive. And I just think it's important that we have a gallery, that we have a means that we share this with people outside our world so that it kind of ups the game a bit in a really positive way. And right now our worlds are so tiny. Let's make them as big as we can.
Yeah.
That's
The
true.
name of the group again?
Excuse me?
What was the name of that group again?
It's in the email I sent. I think it is Letterpress and Bookarts at the workshops of GB Davis.
Okay, I'll look.
You know, a nice short name like that.
It's,
Well, I want to make sure I get my people. And there are other book art groups out there. Look for them. I belong to a couple that are very interesting. People are doing really, really fine work. And it's not hard to do. As you saw today, you learn a few skills a week and you're going to do some pretty, I mean, in a month, you're going to do something like this. I say throwing it down like this. And that's a pretty neat book.
Wow.
Congratulations. You're on the way.